Oh my God, it's Dewey Freeman.
And it's Mr. Mark Sylvester. Good
We're the
morning, sir.
elder council, and we love getting up early. Is that because we're old guys? Because I think a lot of young people get up early.
I don't know if all the young people get up early. I know a few that, sleep until the crack of noon.
I hear of someone, they'll go, oh, I got up at 11, a little early. It's like, whoa, really? I just think of how many hours I'm going to suck the marrow out of the day. So that's why I get up early. I
Exactly.
want all of it, right? I want all of it. I do not want it. However, I do enjoy a good nap. So I have to say that. So I
Yep.
have,
I've been getting up about 5-ish most of my life. So
when I was a breakfast chef, I love being a breakfast chef because you get off at 2 p.m. You got the rest of the day free, which basically you have a whole day. And raising a family, that was a great way to do it. And getting up at 5 was perfect. And then for about a year, I tried the getting up at 5 to just have an hour and a half, 2 hours to myself before the world started. And my bride likes to work late. So I'm a lark, she's a night owl, right? I'm a lark, she's a night owl. So you end up, what happens is you burn the candle at both ends and you don't get enough sleep. Sleep's the priority. So I average around 6-7 o'clock. However, today a saying came back to me this past week, and I thought I would get your thoughts on it because we are of an age. We are like, you had been, if we'd been raised together, you would have been my older brother by a couple of years.
right.
And so the zeitgeist as we were growing up, specifically in high school and in college, right? Young years in college, you went, I didn't, but that age, 17, 18 years old, when counterculture was a thing, when the generation gap was a thing, when it felt like there was only two generations, us and not us, but those that were older than us. Now there's 5 generations, right? There's 5 generations that have stake their claim on the world. Gen X and boomers and millennials and the Zoomers, and then the greatest generation, right? Our folks. We're at the tail end of that crew, but there's 5 of them, and there in fact is a generation gap in between. And for those who don't understand that term, back in the day, it meant there was a communication gap. We couldn't communicate. So I'm going to land this plane. We were told to not trust anyone over 30. Remember that?
Yeah, I totally remember that.
What can you kind of get in the time machine for a second and explain what that felt like and why at that time that was I still remember, it's 50 years later. I remember it like it was yesterday.
I remember it. You mean what it felt like, you mean, or what
Did
it
you believe that?
meant? Actually, I believed it mostly. So what actually is hitting me while you're bringing that up is my perspective now of it is way different than my perspective was then.
We'll get there. Yeah.
Yeah. My perspective then was, it's like, you don't get it, you don't understand, you don't know what we're talking about. And a lot of that, I think, had to do with, at least in my world, had to do with what I would also call the sexual revolution, where sex was the whole idea of what happens sexually between two people or two or more people was being incredibly challenged. Which when that got challenged, everything else got challenged. Our political system, our religious systems,
war in Vietnam and those protests.
yeah, the war in Vietnam, the protests there. And I think a lot was really fueled by, we did not understand what PTSD was. We did not understand what trauma was. We did not understand that the people over 30 had, at that time when I was growing up, the people over 30 had been either in World War II, the Korean War, or the Vietnam War. And the trauma that was created in all of those wars. We didn't get it. And I do think that rebelling against what was going on and why the wars were happening. And I see all three of those wars as very different, by the way.
Yes, I agree.
And why those wars were happening had a lot to do with the breakdown between younger and older generations.
So when we say don't trust anyone over 30 because we saw that the decisions they were making didn't feel like they were good decisions to us. You got us in these wars, you're making all these various decisions that are impacting us, when, especially when you say the Vietnam War, those were people our age. We had friends. We had friends that went to Vietnam and didn't come back. Right. So that
friends, brothers,
yeah.
cousins, yeah.
And we didn't agree. So you took us into a place when, in hearing that I hadn't considered, which is why I love these conversations, because what got me to think about it was, I think I'm an ageist. I'm going to come out as an ageist, because when I hear don't trust anyone over 30, and I lived into that. Now I don't trust anyone under 30.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit more about that.
I look at a 30-year-old and did you watch Game of Thrones?
No.
There's the audience member who's listening will know what I'm going to say next when she says, "You know nothing, Jon Snow." Right? The girl, I forget her name and I apologize, says to Jon Snow, "You know nothing, Jon Snow." And that's why I think I'm an ageist, because I discount. I said, how can you haven't done it yet. You haven't done the things. And now I can turn the chapter.
So you're flipping.
Yeah, I completely flipped. Now, granted, I was running big batteries of kitchens and running restaurants when I was 19 and 20 and 21. I was in that 10-year stretch before I hit 30 and started a software company. I had millions of dollars of budget that I was in charge of, and I was running stuff. I was trusted. I think I was a unicorn in that sense. I wasn't like all the other, my peers, if you will. It was just different. It was just different. But I think of the people in my life now who are under 30, and I was just like, no, not yet. I'm not going to give you something important that's important to me. Right. So before, I'm not going to give my future to you, Pops, because I don't trust you. Now I'm not going to, in most instances, and this is why I'm saying I'm an ageist. This is not a good thing. Let's just be clear that I don't trust.
You're not claiming that that's what, how you
No,
want.
no. That's why I thought it'd be interesting to talk about it, because, and that's part of being an elder as well, is figuring out how to deal with that. I think.
Mm-hmm.
Was that all making sense? This just kind of hit me as something that I didn't expect would be an issue to be an ageist.
What I'm totally getting what you're talking about, and actually a lot of stuff's running through my mind. For you, what is the underlying foundation of what's creating that for you? Do you know?
Yeah, it's, yes, I think I turned 69, and I wouldn't say my own mortality, but it probably is, that has become real for me. I had 4 deaths in my immediate family in the last 12 months. And so mortality has it's part of the conversation now. And when I think about, you know me, I'm a planner, and we talk about stakes in the ground, and we do all of that. But I go, hold it, next year I'm going to be 70. Would a 70-year-old be doing those things? My vision of what a 70-year-old was formed before I was 30. So I have an innate distrust of that was set young. Does this make sense, huh? And so now, as I'm out about in the community doing my shopping, doing my stuff, and I see people with a little wisp of gray hair, I see dads and families, I see people, and I'm thinking, I'm older than most of the people. Now, a lot of retired people live in Santa Barbara, so there are a lot of people that are got 10 and 20 on me that are vibrant and out. But in general, I'm older than most of the people I'm around. And I'm finding I'm a bit of a judge, be very honest. And until you get to talk to them, and of course all that stuff, we shouldn't judge. And I know all of that. Okay, I know all that. I'm being super honest with that feeling. And especially I teach improv and perform improv, which draws a lot of young people. And I'm like, oh, lovely people, but would I trust them with something really serious, with my company, with my money, with my life?
Actually, I can see that. I would be very prone to trusting someone you're in my age with my money, my life, etc., than a 28-year-old. And if I allow myself to really stop and think about it, it's like, what would be the criterion where I might trust somebody that's under 30?
So in fact, so it's a bias. It's a bias, right? And we all have bias. And if we're being present and we're aware, ooh, hold it, that guy is rearing its head right now, that bias filter. What happens when I do that? Right? Is that true? Is that true? Okay, I'll say probably not. As soon as I start to think about it for just a second, I'll and be present and anchor. I'll go, probably not. Okay, tell that guy to step away from the table for a second. Let the reasoned person come in and say, hold it, Mark, when you were 22, you were killing it. Maybe this person that you're talking to is killing it, and you just don't know that, and you don't know them. Give them the benefit of the doubt, which I will do. But I tell you, I'm still I tread lightly.
You still tread in there. So there was, let me talk about my experience yesterday a little bit, because it actually fits into what you're talking about. Kimberly and I did a full day, and it was actually the second class Thursday. We did was about a 4-hour in sit down being taught about fly fishing, with videos and demos and stuff. And then yesterday we went out from 7:30 to 2 or 2:30 and actually got in the river and fished.
Wow.
And it was absolutely incredible. The primary teacher, there are actually two instructors. One was 65, the other one I'm going to guess is probably 27 or 28. There was me, Kimberly, and 4 men, so 6 of us. And their age range was probably late 20s to maybe mid 40s. And then Kimberly and myself. What I found myself doing was, and I really did notice this, was when the main instructor would come up and help me or make a suggestion or say, oh, that was really good, or those kind of things, my response was, thank you, sir. And that's a pretty natural thing to me. What I was aware of was I was the only person who was saying it that way. I know all of the other people were gracious for sure and open, and since we were all focused on fishing, we didn't get to know each other that well, but it was like there was a little bit different way that they came in. And I found myself with 2 things. One is, just because I'm 70 and been beat up, it was like, I was pretty proud of myself. If you're wading in a river you're up to the middle of your thighs, it's a little bit intimidating.
Mm.
And it was like, oh, I did this pretty well.
Mm.
And everyone had some balance stuff, because walking in moving water, and if it's 6 inches deep, it's like no big deal. If it's 2.5 or 3 feet deep, it's a pretty big deal. And it was like, and what I also found was I found myself getting tired, I think, sooner than other people. Now, we had about 20 minutes to go. It was like 20 till 2, and we were going to wrap up at 2. And it was like, okay, I'm pretty wiped out. I'm going to just sit and enjoy the scenery for this last 20 minutes. But here's why I'm going with this. And actually the younger teacher he's very kind, he's very good and very respectful. And that's really where I was going. Where I struggle is when somebody is way younger than me, like, since we're
50.
talking about 30,
Yeah.
50. Yeah. Where I could actually be their grandfather or,
Exactly. Exactly.
It's like if they meet me with a level of respect and a level of getting that they, that they may know a lot, but they have knowing something and having another 50 years experience with something are 2 very different things.
Yeah.
And that's where I struggle and that's what I don't trust.
When they don't have that level of respect for the experience.
Yes. And then on the opposite side, I think when I was under 30, I'm not sure that I had the level of respect that I probably should have had.
Yeah, well, exactly, because we weren't to trust those people.
Well,
We heard that
and
a lot.
we heard that a lot. And I didn't have the level of respect for many because they were making such poor choices.
Right.
And so, so the level of respect to me is a really big deal. That's what change. That's what closes the gap.
So something crossed my mind as you were saying that, and it's something you and I have in common, and this might be a thread we could pull. When you said thank you, sir, I address nearly everybody as sir and ma'am. Nearly
Yes.
everybody, including my grandson. Thank you, sir. Always, always. And where did I get that? Got it on the mat. Got it on the mat. Almost 20 years ago. It is part of who I am, but it wasn't until I was 50 where I learned, well, first off, Grandmaster, that's his mat. That's his house. So respect starts. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I will treat everyone else with that level of respect. And that starts in that school. That starts with the 4-year-olds. So whatever the little ninjas are, whatever that small age is, yes, sir. And you bow and you have respect for your elders. And it's a Marshall thing because you can't count on the parents to have taught that. Mine didn't. So is it something in there that if that the younger has a respect and just even for that second that's going to create an opening for you to then have a conversation?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what I find is that and I also think I spend a fair amount of time with a lot of men who are younger, and they want to be mentored, and they want to eventually become a mentor. But one of those pieces has to do with respect. And what I find myself, and it was really interesting, I saw a interview with Gabor Mate, who is, if anybody doesn't know who he is, it would clearly be worth
MATE with a
finding out.
little over the E.
Yeah. Yeah. And in that interview, he was asked, when do you find yourself not doing well with other people? And he said, when I feel disrespected. And he's 77 or 78 right now. And I think we have lost that. And what I wonder about is when, if, and I've never thought about this in this way before, is that when we were under 30 and we were going, don't respect anyone over 30, if that's part of what happened, if that wasn't part of the process of losing respect for elders, and if on some levels we even help start that.
And I'm going to take it one year. Yes. And I'll take it a step further. I wrote a long piece about reverse mentoring. So being mentored by a younger person. And I've had that, and I haven't had that explicit relationship yet. I called attention to a situation when I was working with high school kids at my software company. We had at-risk high school kids, and we had a teacher who had come to me, and he was a bit of a rebel, and we ran this program, and he had said to me, he said, don't forget, their minds are as buff as their bodies. I went, oh. And it was that was a seminal conversation. It was 15 seconds long. Because I think he saw me disrespecting them probably in something that I said, and probably not overt, but it was probably a little shade on their youth. And he said their minds are, and I was like, oh, he says they're adults. They're young. They're adults. So treat them
Mhm.
with respect. And it's like, yeah. And that completely switched for me at that time. And I wrote about it just this last year.
Yeah,
And
very, very well done,
and I
by the
think
way.
the point
If
is,
anyone gets a chance to read it.
yeah, thank you. The point is, it is a respect thing, and you don't, either they don't respect our experience, we don't respect their youthful zeal and experience and stuff. They've lived shit. Even 16 years, they got it that far, or 18 years or 20 years or whatever. They just don't have all the experience. But if you respect them, and I'm now talking to myself, and they respect you, there's a fine line, by the way. When Gabor said they don't respect me, there's a fine line where they patronize you. It's not true
Yes,
respect. That's where that comes from,
yes.
right? I'm okay, Obi-Wan.
Mhm.
Yeah, go for it. What else you got? And that's not respect. That's not authentic.
Right.
And you can feel that, can't you?
Totally feel it. You can, the difference between, um, well, saying that, it's like there's a difference between respecting and wanting to learn from me and respecting or acting as if they're respecting me, but wanting to get from me. They're those are two really big differences.
So you remember around that same time in our lives, there was the um I don't know what it was, a type of, I'll call it pop psychology, but it was parent, 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 child, 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 parent. Do you remember that? It was like,
Yeah, it's transactional analysis.
that's what it was. TA, transactional analysis. Yeah, I remember that. See, I remember that of all these years. And that what happens, where stuff, I don't want to get into that too much, but it's like, if all my things are adult child, I teach every person in my universe as a child. I'm the adult. I know better. They're the child. That's going to break. If I treat everyone, my peer, as a peer, as an adult, that's completely different, right? If I got that right.
Mm-hmm.
And it was treating the younger person as an adult.
Yes.
And that's where it's not like, hey, I know everything, I'm going to come tell you because you know nothing, Jon Snow, right? It's not like
Mm-hmm.
that. And and it makes me, it makes me think about the series, the Star Wars extension series called Obi-Wan Kenobi, and where Disney has
Mm-hmm.
created a series that's just Obi-Wan when he was in his 30s,
Mm.
right? So he's not, Obi-Wan is, he knows everything. Obi-Wan is all that stuff. But if we look at him in his 30s, he didn't. His question, he didn't know. He wasn't there yet. And I think that's kind of the premise of our whole show, isn't it?
Yes. To know that you're not there yet, and which then allows you to get there, interestingly enough.
Right.
Which there's also a thing where when people don't know very much, I think it's called the
Yes.
Dunning, what is
Yeah.
it? Dunning-Kruger
And
effect, I think,
yes, it is. Dunning-Kruger effect. Yeah.
where when somebody doesn't know very much and they think they know a lot, that's problematic. That's the disrespect piece for me. And we've talked before about the 4 levels of learning, of unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence, and unconscious competence. When we know where we're at in something new, like for instance, yesterday, you know, when I'm learning to fly fish, it's like, well, I was very much at the competence, conscious incompetence. It's like, yeah, I can see how incredibly
Yeah.
deep this can go and the levels of what you can learn. And I know like 0.5%. Knowing that is, and then knowing that I'm around somebody who, can do it with their eyes closed, literally, that's knowing where you're at and not pretending like you're not where you're at is what I think creates that level of respect that can and will bridge the gap between what goes on generationally.
What a perfect button to put on this conversation. I would encourage people to look up and down the generational food chain around them, those above and those below, and think about these things we've said and figure out how you might close the gap on relationships at work, relationships with friends, relationships in the family.
Right on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend.